Eleanor's hands were still shaking when she saw him walk through the hospital doors the next morning. The same man she dragged out of Murphy's bar just 12 hours ago, when he could barely stand. Except now he was sober, wearing a crisp navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and holding a bouquet of white lilies that made every head in the waiting room turn. Their eyes met across the crowded lobby, and he smiled. Not the sloppy, broken smile from last night, but something softer, almost vulnerable. He started walking toward her, and Eleanor felt her heart drop straight into her stomach because she knew, right then and there, that her quiet, ordinary life was about to get very complicated. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here, because the truth is, Eleanor Hart never wanted to be anyone's hero. She just wanted to survive another shift without crying in the supply closet. 29 years old, and already tired of explaining herself. That's what Eleanor thought every time someone asked why she was still single, still working double shifts at Mercy General, still living in that cramped studio apartment above the laundromat on 5th Street. Her ex-boyfriend Trevor had been kind enough to spell it out for her 2 years ago. You're just too ordinary, El. No spark. No avventure. He'd left her for a yoga instructor named Sage who posted daily affirmations on Instagram and had never worked a regular job in her life. Eleanor had cried for 3 days straight, then picked herself up and decided that ordinary was fine. Ordinary meant reliable. Ordinary meant her patients trusted her, depended on her, remembered her name. Ordinary meant she went home alone every night, sure, but at least nobody was there to remind her she wasn't enough. Last night had started like any other Thursday. Eleanor had just finished a brutal 12-hour shift in the cardiac unit. 2 codes, 1 death, and a family who screamed at her because their father's toast was cold. Her best friend Maya had texted her 17 times, insisting they stop by Murphy's bar for just 1 drink before heading home. Eleanor almost said no. She usually said no, but something about the exhaustion pressing down on her shoulders made her think maybe, just maybe, a beer and some human conversation that didn't involve bedpans would help. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Murphy's was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the jukebox still played CDs, and where the bartender Tom remembered your drink after 2 visits. It smelled like beer and fried pickles and old wood, and normally Eleanor found it comforting. But that night, there was tension in the air, whispers and sideways glances all aimed at the back corner booth where a man sat alone, hunched over an empty glass. He didn't belong there. That much was obvious. His suit was tailored, his watch caught the dim light like a small sun, and his face, even twisted with whatever pain he was drowning, had the kind of sharp, refined features you saw in magazine ads for expensive cologne. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes, when he lifted them briefly, were the color of storm clouds before rain. That's the 3rd time Tom's cut him off, Maya whispered, nodding toward the man. Apparently he showed up 2 hours ago, ordered top-shelf whiskey, and hasn't said a word to anyone except to ask for more. Eleanor watched as the man tried to stand, stumbled, and caught himself on the edge of the table. A few people laughed. Most just looked away, uncomfortable with witnessing someone else's breakdown. Tom was on his phone, probably calling a cab, but Eleanor could see the man fumbling for his keys. He's going to drive, Eleanor said quietly. Not our problem, Maya replied, but her voice was uncertain. Eleanor thought about all the accident victims she'd seen roll through Mercy General's emergency department. She thought about the families she'd had to face, the children who'd never see their parents again, the futures erased in a single moment of bad judgment. She thought about Trevor calling her ordinary, and she realized she didn't care. She stood up. "Oh, what are you doing?" Maya grabbed her arm. "Something stupid, probably." Eleanor crossed the bar, ignoring the curious stares. Up close, the man looked worse. His eyes were bloodshot, his breathing uneven, and there was a desperation in his expression that made her chest ache. He was trying to punch numbers into his phone and failing. "Hey," Eleanor said softly, crouching beside him so she was at eye level. "You can't drive like this." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment his expression cleared. "I'm fine. You're not." And you know you're not. She kept her voice gentle, the same tone she used with frightened patients. Let me help you get home safe. Please. Why? The question came out slurred but genuine. Why do you care? Eleanor thought about it. Because someone should. What happened next changed everything. The man let her call him a cab, let her support his weight as they walked outside, let her make sure he got in safely. Before the cab pulled away, he grabbed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong despite the alcohol. Thank you, he mumbled. You're the first person in months who's looked at me like I'm human. Eleanor pulled her hand back gently. You don't owe me anything. Just try not to give up on yourself. She watched the cab's taillights disappear into the night, assuming she'd never see him again. Assuming it was just another small kindness in a life full of them, quickly forgotten by everyone except her. She was wrong. Now here he stood in her hospital lobby, walking toward her with those lilies and that devastating smile, and Eleanor's first thought wasn't gratitude or curiosity. It was panic. Because she knew what happened to ordinary girls who got involved with men who wore $1,000 suits. She'd seen enough Lifetime movies to know this story never ended well. Nurse Hart, he said, and his voice was nothing like last night's broken mumble. It was clear, educated, touched with an accent she couldn't quite place. I've been looking for you. Every nurse, every doctor, every patient in that lobby was staring now. Eleanor felt heat creep up her neck. I'm working, she managed. I can't. I know. He held out the lilies, and she noticed his hands were steady now, his eyes clear and impossibly blue in the morning light. I needed to say thank you, properly, and to tell you that you saved my life last night. I just called you a cab, Eleanor protested, but her voice came out smaller than she intended. No. His gaze held hers, intense and unwavering. You did something much more important than that. You saw me when I was invisible. You cared when no one else did, and I don't take that lightly. Before Eleanor could respond, her supervisor's voice cut through the moment like a knife. Nurse Hart, we have patients waiting. The man stepped back, but he didn't break eye contact. I'll come back, he said quietly, if that's okay with you. Eleanor should have said no, should have taken the flowers, thanked him politely, and walked away. Should have protected her ordinary, predictable, safe little life. But something in his expression, something raw and real and desperately hopeful, made her hesitate. I work until 7, she heard herself say, and watched his entire face transform with relief. He smiled again, and this time it reached his eyes. I'll be here at 7:01. Eleanor took the lilies. They were beautiful, the kind you saw at expensive weddings, not small-town hospital visits, and turned toward the nurse's station on shaking legs. Maya was there, mouth literally hanging open, and Eleanor knew she'd have about 30 seconds before the question started. But as she walked away, she caught her reflection in the glass door and barely recognized herself. For the first time in 2 years, Eleanor Hart looked like a woman with a secret. And God help her, she liked it. What would you do if a stranger you helped showed up the next day, claiming you saved their life? Would you let them back into your world, or would you run before things got complicated? Eleanor was hiding in the supply closet when Maya found her, which was exactly as pathetic as it sounds. 7 hours had crawled by since the flower incident, and she'd spent every single one of them trying to convince herself that the man, she still didn't know his name, wouldn't actually show up at 7. Rich men didn't keep promises to ordinary nurses. They said pretty things in moments of gratitude, then went back to their expensive lives and forgot all about the people who'd helped them. He's here, Maya said, yanking open the closet door. And now, he's not alone. He brought an entire medical equipment donation, like actual thousands of dollars worth of stuff. The director is losing her mind. Eleanor's stomach dropped. What? Yeah. He showed up at 6:30 with a truck full of state-of-the-art monitors, new wheelchairs, and I swear to God, Eleanor, I saw an ultrasound machine. Director Patterson is out there practically kissing his feet. Maya grabbed her shoulders. Who is this guy? And why is he obsessed with you? That's what Eleanor wanted to know. She checked her reflection in the small mirror they kept for checking pupils. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her ponytail was a mess, and she had a coffee stain on her collar from when Mr. Jenkins in room 304 had startled her during his blood pressure check. This was not the version of herself she wanted to present to a man who apparently threw around medical equipment like party favors. But it was 7:02, and Eleanor Hart had never broken a promise in her life. She found him in the main lobby, standing next to Director Patterson and looking completely at ease in his expensive suit while her boss gestured excitedly at some paperwork. The moment he saw Eleanor, though, everything else seemed to fall away. He excused himself politely and walked toward her, and Eleanor noticed that everyone, doctors, nurses, visitors, even the security guard, tracked his movement like he was some kind of celebrity. "You came," he said, and there was real relief in his voice. "You donated medical equipment to get me to have dinner with you?" Eleanor kept her voice low, aware of all the eyes on them. His lips quirked into a small smile. "I donated medical equipment because this hospital clearly needs it. The dinner invitation is separate. I'm Aldrich, by the way. Aldrich Thorne. I realized I never actually introduced myself last night. Aldrich Thorne." The name hit her like cold water. Even Eleanor, who didn't follow business news or society pages, had heard that name. Thorne Industries. Real estate. Tech investments. The kind of wealth that made mayors return phone calls and governors show up to ribbon cuttings. "Oh God," Eleanor breathed. "You're that Thorne." Unfortunately, something dark flickered across his face. "Does that change things?" "It should have. It absolutely should have." But Eleanor looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the same desperate loneliness she'd seen last night in the bar. Money couldn't hide that. Designer suits couldn't mask it. Whatever had broken him was still there, just better dressed. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But I'm hungry, so you might as well feed me while I figure it out." His laugh was surprised and genuine. Fair enough. They ended up at Rosie's Diner, which was probably not what Aldrich had in mind when he suggested dinner. Eleanor had insisted. If they were doing this, they were doing it on her turf, not some fancy restaurant where the forks had rules and the wine cost more than her car payment. To his credit, Aldrich didn't complain. He slid into the cracked vinyl booth across from her and studied the laminated menu like it was a fascinating document. "The meatloaf is good," Eleanor offered, "and Rosie makes the best apple pie in 3 counties. Then I'll have both." He set down the menu and looked at her. "Thank you for giving me a chance. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." Eleanor wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "I spent the whole day trying to convince myself you wouldn't show up. Rich guys don't usually," she stopped herself. "Don't usually what?" "Notice people like me. Not for longer than it takes to say thank you, anyway." Aldrich was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Last night, I was at the lowest point of my life. I'd lost my company to a hostile takeover. My ex-fiancée, had left me for my business partner, the same partner who orchestrated the takeover. I went to that bar planning to drink until I couldn't remember my own name, and then I was going to drive my car into the river." Eleanor's breath caught. "Aldrich, I'm not telling you this for sympathy," he continued. "I'm telling you because you need to understand something. When you walked up to me, you didn't see Aldrich Thorne, billionaire. You didn't see a bank account or a business opportunity. You saw a human being who was suffering, and you decided that mattered. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Have you ever met someone whose kindness changed everything, or does everyone in your life want something from you?" Eleanor didn't know what to say. Rosie arrived with their food, breaking the tension, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. But Eleanor's mind was racing. She thought about Trevor, who'd left her because she wasn't exciting enough. She thought about all the men she'd dated who'd eventually gotten bored with her simple life. And here was Aldrich Thorne, who could have anyone, anything, and he was sitting in a diner eating meatloaf because she'd asked him to. "Why me?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Really, why are you here?" Aldrich set down his fork. "Because when I woke up this morning in my empty penthouse, with a hangover that felt like my skull was splitting open, the only thing I could remember clearly from the night before was your voice. Try not to give up on yourself. Nobody said anything like that to me in years. Maybe ever. That's a lot of pressure to put on a stranger. Is that what we are? Strangers?" Eleanor met his gaze. "I don't know what we are." "Then let's find out." He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his skin. No expectations, no pressure, just two people getting to know each other. Can we try that? Every rational part of Eleanor's brain screamed that this was a bad idea. Men like Aldrich Thorne didn't date nurses from small towns. This was a rebound, a gratitude thing, a temporary distraction that would end with her heart in pieces and him moving on to someone more suitable, someone from his world. But there was something in his eyes, something honest and raw and achingly hopeful, that made her want to be brave. Okay, Eleanor said quietly. We could try. Aldrich's smile could have lit up the entire diner. They talked for 2 more hours, long after they'd finished eating, long after Rosie had refilled their coffee 3 times and started giving them knowing looks. He told her about growing up in a family where love was transactional, where every relationship had an agenda. She told him about her parents dying in a car crash when she was 22, about building a life from nothing, about learning to be okay with ordinary. There's nothing ordinary about you, Aldrich said as they finally left the diner. Ordinary people don't save strangers. Ordinary people don't risk their own comfort for someone else's safety. Then you don't know very many nurses, Eleanor replied, but she was smiling. He walked her to her car, a 12-year-old Honda with a dent in the back bumper, and didn't say a word about the contrast between it and whatever luxury vehicle he probably drove. Instead, he waited until she'd unlocked the door, then said, "Can I see you again? You know where I work?" Eleanor pointed out. "I do, but I want to hear you say yes." Eleanor looked at him, this impossible man with his sad eyes and expensive suit, and felt something shift in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "Yes," she said, "you can see me again." She drove home with the radio off, replaying the evening in her head, trying to figure out when exactly her life had taken this surreal turn. Her phone buzzed at a red light. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for tonight. Sleep well, Eleanor." She was still smiling when she walked into her apartment. Still smiling when she changed into her pajamas and brushed her teeth. Still smiling when she finally crawled into bed. She didn't see the black sedan parked across the street from her building, or the woman inside it taking photos through a telephoto lens. Didn't know that by morning, her face would be on the desk of Vanessa Price, Aldrich's ex-fiancée, who would look at those photos and smile in a way that promised nothing good. But Eleanor would find out soon enough. Because men like Aldrich Thorne didn't come without complications, and the past he was running from was about to catch up to both of them. The flowers started arriving on Tuesday. Not just one bouquet, 3. Roses at the nurse's station. Orchids delivered to her apartment. Wildflowers waiting in her car with a note that said, "Because you mentioned loving them as a kid." Eleanor didn't know whether to be touched or terrified. Probably both. By Wednesday, the entire hospital was talking. Nurses whispered in corners. Doctors raised eyebrows when she walked by. Even patients asked if she was that nurse dating the billionaire. And Eleanor had to explain, over and over, that she'd had one dinner with Aldrich Thorne and that did not constitute dating. Except he kept showing up. Thursday morning, he appeared with coffee. Not hospital cafeteria coffee, but the expensive kind from the boutique place downtown that Eleanor had only been to once because $12 for coffee seemed like a crime. He knew her order somehow. 2 shots of espresso, extra foam, cinnamon on top. "How did you?" Eleanor started. "I called and described you," Aldrich said simply. "The barista remembered you. Said you tipped her $10 on a $12 order and spent the whole time apologizing for being high maintenance." Eleanor felt her cheeks burn. "I'm not good with luxury." "I know. That's what I like about you." He handed her the coffee, and their fingers brushed. Eleanor felt that touch all the way to her toes. "Lunch. I'm working." "Dinner. Aldrich. Breakfast tomorrow. Coffee Sunday. A phone call literally any time." There was humor in his voice, but also something more vulnerable. "I'm trying very hard not to seem desperate, but I think I'm failing." Eleanor glanced around. At least 15 people were watching them, including her supervisor, who looked like she couldn't decide whether to be impressed or annoyed. This was getting out of hand. "Dinner," Eleanor agreed, "but somewhere quiet. Please. I can't handle another scene." His smile was worth every curious stare. "I know just the place. That night, a car arrived at her apartment at 6:30. Not Aldrich, but a driver in a black suit who held open the door of a Mercedes that probably cost more than Eleanor's entire life savings. She almost turned around and went back inside. Almost. But curiosity won, same as it always did, and Eleanor found herself driven 20 minutes outside town to a house on the lake. Not a house, actually, an estate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking water that reflected the sunset like liquid gold. A wraparound deck with furniture that probably came from Italy. And Aldrich, standing at the entrance in jeans and a simple white button-down, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "You said quiet," he explained, gesturing to the empty house. "It doesn't get quieter than this. I hope I didn't overstep." Eleanor stepped out of the car, her heart pounding. "Is this your house?" "One of them. I don't use it much anymore. Too many memories." Something sad crossed his face. "I thought maybe we could make some better ones." They had dinner on the deck, pasta that Aldrich had somehow made himself, garlic bread that was slightly burnt, and wine that probably cost more than her rent. The sun set while they ate, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, and Eleanor felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life. Some better, shinier version of reality where she was the kind of woman who had dinner with billionaires and didn't feel out of place. "Tell me something real," Aldrich said suddenly. "Something you've never told anyone else." Eleanor took a sip of wine, buying time. "That's a dangerous question." "I know. Tell me anyway." She thought about it. About all the things she kept locked inside because they were too honest, too raw, too much for casual conversation. Then she decided that if this thing between them was going to be real, it needed truth. "What's the one thing you've never told anyone because you're afraid they'll see you differently?" "We all have secrets. What's yours?" "Sometimes I'm angry," Eleanor said quietly. "Everyone thinks I'm this nice, patient person, the kind nurse, the good girl. And I'm those things, but I'm also angry. I'm angry that my parents died and left me alone. I'm angry that I work myself to exhaustion and still can't afford anything nice. I'm angry that my ex made me feel worthless for being ordinary. And I'm angry that I can't seem to want anything more than what I have, because wanting more feels greedy." Aldrich was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I'm angry too. I'm angry that my father taught me to measure my worth in dollars. I'm angry that Vanessa, my ex, used me as a stepping stone to someone more useful. I'm angry that I let her. And I'm angry that even after losing everything, all anyone sees when they look at me is money." Eleanor met his gaze across the table. "I don't see money when I look at you. I know. That's why I'm here." They talked until the stars came out, until the wine bottle was empty, until Eleanor realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd laughed this much or felt this comfortable with another person. Aldrich told her about his mother, who died when he was young, about being raised by a father who saw children as investments, about building an empire and discovering too late that it cost him everything else. Eleanor told him about nursing school, about her first patient death, about the moment she realized helping people was the only thing that made her feel less alone. They traded stories like currency, each revelation bringing them closer, until the space between them felt charged with something neither of them was quite ready to name. "I should go," Eleanor said finally, reluctantly. "I have an early shift." Aldrich walked her to the car, and this time when he looked at her, there was heat in his gaze that made her breath catch. "Eleanor, don't," she said softly, because she knew what he was going to say and she wasn't ready for it. "This is moving fast. Too fast. I need time to think." "How much time?" "I don't know. More than 3 days." She tried to smile. "You're very intense, Aldrich Thorne. Only about things that matter." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. "You matter." Eleanor felt her resolve wavering. "You barely know me. Then let me know you. Really know you. Not the nurse everyone sees at the hospital. Not the kind woman who saves drunk strangers. You. The real Eleanor. Anger and all. It was the anger and all that did it. That acknowledgement that she was more than just nice, more than just ordinary. That her complications were welcome, not something to hide or apologize for. Okay, Eleanor whispered. But we take this slow, and you have to tell me the truth about what happened. About your ex, about your business, about why you were really in that bar. All of it. Aldrich's expression turned guarded. That's a dark story. I don't care. If we're doing this, I need to know what I'm getting into. He studied her for a long moment, and Eleanor could see him deciding something, weighing risk against reward. Finally, he nodded. This weekend, I'll tell you everything. But Eleanor, once you know, you might want to run, and I wouldn't blame you. Let me make that choice, she said. The drive home was quiet, Eleanor's mind spinning. She was getting involved with a man whose life was so far removed from hers that they might as well be from different planets. A man with an ex-fiancée and business rivals and enough money to make problems disappear or create them. A man who looked at her like she was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life. Her phone buzzed the moment she walked into her apartment. Maya, naturally. Okay, Spiel. Where have you been? And why is there a photo of you online getting into a Mercedes? Eleanor's blood went cold. What? Check your email. Someone sent me a link to some gossip site. There's a whole article about Aldrich Thorne's mystery woman. Oh, they have your picture. Eleanor fumbled for her laptop with shaking hands. Sure enough, there it was. A photo of her climbing into the Mercedes, her face clearly visible. The headline read, Billionaire Aldrich Thorne spotted with unknown nurse. Rebound romance or real deal? The article was worse. It mentioned her name, her age, where she worked. It had quotes from sources close to Thorne, suggesting this was just a phase, a way for him to cope with his breakup. It called her plain and wholesome, and exactly the kind of good girl image Thorne needs to rebuild his reputation. Eleanor felt sick. This wasn't real. This was strategy, image management. She was a prop in someone else's story. Her phone rang. Aldrich. Eleanor, I just saw. Is it true? Her voice came out harsh. Am I just good PR for you? The nice nurse to make you look human again. What? No. Eleanor, listen to me. Because if this is some kind of game, you need to tell me now. She was shaking, anger and hurt mixing into something toxic. I can't be someone's redemption arc. I can't be the before picture in your comeback story. You're not. His voice was fierce. I don't know who leaked this or why, but you have to believe me. This isn't a game. You're not a strategy. What I feel for you is real. Eleanor wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to, but she'd been hurt before, and this time mistakes were so much higher. I need space, she said. I need to think. Eleanor, please. She hung up, stared at the article on her screen. Read the comments below it. Strangers discussing her appearance, her worthiness, whether she was pretty enough or interesting enough to keep a man like Aldrich Thorne's attention. Eleanor closed her laptop and cried for the first time since Trevor had left her, because she'd been stupid enough to hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Her phone buzzed again. Not Aldrich this time. An unknown number. She almost didn't open the message. Stay away from him, or you'll regret it. This is your only warning. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the threatening text until her eyes burned, trying to figure out who would care enough about her seeing Aldrich to send something like that. The obvious answer was his ex-fiancée, but Eleanor didn't even know what the woman looked like, let alone have any connection to her. By morning, she'd made a decision. She was going to step back, let Aldrich return to his world, let the gossip sites find someone else to write about, let her life return to its comfortable, ordinary rhythm. It was better this way, safer. Then she walked into the hospital and found him in the waiting room. He looked terrible, like he'd been up all night too, his suit wrinkled, his hair uncombed, shadows under his eyes that made him look almost haunted. The moment he saw Eleanor, he stood up so fast he knocked over the chair beside him. Please, he said, and his voice cracked on the word. Please just let me explain. Eleanor glanced around. Every eye in the lobby was on them again, but this time she was too tired to care. You have 5 minutes. They ended up in the chapel, the small, quiet room on the second floor where families went to pray when things were bad. Empty at this hour, just rows of chairs and a stained glass window that cast colored light across the floor. Aldrich didn't sit. He paced like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair, trying to find words. Finally, he stopped and looked at her. Her name is Vanessa Price. We were together for 3 years, engaged for one. I thought we were building something real. Turns out she was building her own empire using my connections, my reputation, my trust. His jaw clenched. 6 months ago, I found out she was sleeping with Marcus Chun, my business partner. But it was worse than that. They'd been planning a hostile takeover of my company for over a year. She'd been feeding him inside information, turning my board against me, destroying me from the inside out. Eleanor's anger wavered, replaced by something that felt uncomfortably close to sympathy. Aldrich, I lost everything. My company, my reputation, most of my fortune. I'm still fighting lawsuits, still trying to untangle the mess they made. He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was raw. That night at the bar, I just signed the final papers, giving up the last piece of the empire I'd spent 10 years building. And I was done, completely done, until I showed up, Eleanor said quietly. Until you showed up and reminded me that not everyone has an agenda. That kindness still exists in the world. That maybe I was worth saving after all. He took a step toward her. I didn't leak that story to the press. I would never do that to you. But I know who did. Vanessa. She's been having me followed since I met you. She has this twisted idea that we're going to get back together once I'm done acting out. Seeing me with you threatens that fantasy. So she's trying to scare you off. Eleanor thought about the text message. She texted me last night, told me to stay away from you, or I'd regret it. Aldrich's expression turned murderous. She did what? I'm guessing that's not part of your normal breakup routine. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to get dragged into this mess. If I'd known she would target you. He stopped, helpless. I should have stayed away. Should have let you walk away at the diner. But I'm selfish and I couldn't. Eleanor studied him. This broken, dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow stumbled into her ordinary life and turned everything upside down. The smart thing would be to walk away now, before things got worse. Before his ex-fiancée's threats escalated. Before Eleanor's heart got any more involved. When someone's past threatens your present, do you run or do you fight? Would you risk everything for a chance at something real? But Eleanor had spent her whole life being smart, being careful, protecting herself from anything that might hurt or disappoint or complicate things. And where had it gotten her? Alone in a studio apartment, working double shifts, convincing herself that ordinary was enough. Maybe it was time to stop being smart. I want to meet her, Eleanor said. Aldrich blinked. What? Your ex. I want to meet her face to face. Because if she's going to threaten me, she should have the guts to do it in person. Eleanor crossed her arms. And I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Eleanor, that's not a good idea. Vanessa is dangerous, manipulative, clearly obsessed with you. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. I'm a nurse. I've dealt with violent patients, abusive family members, and people high on every drug imaginable. I think I can handle one bitter ex-girlfriend. A smile tugged at Aldrich's lips despite everything. You're terrifying sometimes. You know that. Good. Maybe that means I'm not as ordinary as everyone thinks. Eleanor pulled out her phone. So how do we do this? Does she have a lair? A secret volcano headquarters? She has a penthouse downtown. But Eleanor, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm telling. Eleanor met his gaze. Look, I don't know what this thing between us is or where it's going. But I do know I'm tired of being scared. Tired of running from anything that might be complicated or messy or hard. If we're going to do this, really do this, then I need to face whatever darkness you're bringing with you, including her. Aldrich looked at her like she'd just offered him salvation. You're extraordinary. I hope you know that. Tell me after we survive this, Eleanor said. They made a plan. Saturday night, Vanessa was hosting a charity event at her penthouse. The kind of party where tickets cost thousands and the champagne flowed like water. Aldrich could get them in. He still got invited to everything, even after the scandal, because money opened doors that morality couldn't close. What do I wear to something like this? Eleanor asked, suddenly panicked. I own scrubs and jeans. That's it. Aldrich's smile was soft. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. The dress arrived Friday afternoon, delivered to the hospital in a garment bag that probably cost more than Eleanor's monthly groceries. She opened it in the locker room with Maya hovering over her shoulder, and both of them gasped. It was midnight blue, simple but elegant, with a neckline that dipped just low enough to be interesting and fabric that felt like liquid against Eleanor's skin. The kind of dress that made you feel beautiful just by putting it on. Oh my God, Maya breathed. Elle, this is designer. Like, actual designer. I recognize this stitching from Fashion Week coverage. Eleanor touched the fabric reverently. I can't accept this. You absolutely can and will. Maya grabbed her shoulders. You're going to walk into that party looking like a queen, stare down that witch who's been threatening you, and show her that you're not afraid. I am afraid, Eleanor admitted. Then fake it. That's what lipstick and good posture are for. Maya hugged her. But seriously, Elle, be careful. Women like Vanessa don't play fair. Saturday night arrived too quickly. Eleanor stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress fit perfectly. Her hair was swept up in a style she'd found on YouTube and attempted 3 times before getting right. She'd even bought new shoes, simple black heels that she could maybe walk in if she was very careful. The knock on her door at 7 was Aldrich, and when Eleanor opened it, they both stopped and stared. He was in a tuxedo because, of course, he was looking like he'd stepped out of a movie. But it was the way he looked at her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. That made Eleanor's breath catch. You're beautiful, he said simply. You clean up okay, too. Eleanor managed, her voice shaky. The drive downtown was quiet, tension building with every mile. Aldrich kept glancing at her, like he was memorizing her face, and Eleanor wondered if he was thinking the same thing she was. That after tonight, everything would change, for better or worse. The penthouse was exactly as terrible as Eleanor had imagined. All glass and chrome and modern art that probably cost more than her car. People in expensive clothes drinking expensive drinks, laughing expensive laughs that didn't quite reach their eyes. Eleanor felt like an alien, but Aldrich's hand to the small of her back kept her grounded. She's here, he murmured, by the windows. Eleanor followed his gaze and saw her. Vanessa Price was everything Eleanor wasn't. Tall, willowy, blonde hair that fell in perfect waves down her back. She wore red like a weapon. Her dress cut to show off a body that probably required a personal trainer and a very specific diet. Beautiful in that sharp, intimidating way that made other women feel small. She saw them at the same moment, and her smile turned predatory. Showtime, Eleanor whispered. Vanessa glided toward them, champagne in hand, her eyes fixed on Eleanor with the focus of a shark spotting blood in the water. Aldrich, darling, she said, her voice honey-sweet and poisonous. I didn't realize you were bringing a guest. How unexpected. Then she turned to Eleanor, and her smile was all teeth. You must be the little nurse everyone's talking about. How absolutely adorable. Eleanor met her gaze and didn't flinch. And you must be the ex-fiancé everyone warned me about. How absolutely predictable. Vanessa's smile froze. Behind them, Eleanor heard someone choke on their drink. Aldrich's hand tightened on her back, whether in support or warning, she couldn't tell. But Eleanor had spent years dealing with difficult people, years learning to stand her ground, and she was done being intimidated. We need to talk, Eleanor said quietly. Somewhere private, unless you'd prefer to have this conversation in front of all your guests. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, calculating. Then she laughed, sharp and brittle. How delightful. The mouse's teeth. Fine. My office. 5 minutes. She turned and walked away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and implied threats. Aldrich leaned close to Eleanor. You don't have to do this. Yes, Eleanor said, watching Vanessa disappear into the crowd. I really do, because whatever happened in that office would determine everything. Would tell Eleanor whether this thing with Aldrich was worth fighting for or just another beautiful disaster waiting to destroy her. Either way, she was done running. The office was all windows and white furniture, cold and pristine like a museum exhibit. Vanessa stood behind her desk, no longer smiling, her beauty turning hard and sharp in the city lights filtering through the glass. Close the door, she said, and Eleanor did, her heart pounding but her hands steady. They faced each other across the desk, the the billionaire's ex and the small-town nurse, and Eleanor wondered what she'd gotten herself into. But it was too late to back out now. "You have 5 minutes," Vanessa said, checking her watch. "Make it count." Eleanor took a breath. "I want to know what you want. You texted me. You leaked my photo to the press. You're clearly threatened by me being with Aldrich. So tell me, what's your endgame here?" Vanessa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You really have no idea, do you? God, you're even more naive than you look." She moved around the desk, circling Eleanor like a predator. "Let me explain something about men like Aldrich Thorne. They don't end up with women like you. They don't marry nurses and live in suburban houses with white picket fences. They marry equals, people who understand their world. People like you mean? Exactly like me." Vanessa stopped in front of Eleanor, close enough that Eleanor could smell her perfume, expensive and cloying. "Aldrich and I built something together. Yes, ended badly. Yes, there were complications. But we were equals. We spoke the same language. We understood each other's ambitions. You destroyed him," Eleanor said quietly. "You took everything he built and burned it to the ground." "I elevated myself," Vanessa corrected. "That's what survival looks like in our world." Aldrich was too sentimental, too attached to outdated ideas about loyalty and trust. "I did what I needed to do." Eleanor stared at her. "And now you want him back?" "I want what's mine. And Aldrich Thorne was mine for 3 years. You think 1 week of playing Florence Nightingale makes you special? Makes you different from all the other charity cases he's picked up over the years?" The words hit harder than Eleanor wanted to admit. Because wasn't that her fear? That she was just another good deed, another way for Aldrich to feel better about himself? But then Eleanor remembered the way Aldrich looked at her. The vulnerability in his eyes. The desperation in his voice when he asked her to give him a chance. That wasn't charity. That was real. "I don't know if I'm special," Eleanor said steadily. "But I know I see him. Not his money. Not his status. Him. The man who was broken enough to almost end his life, and brave enough to accept help from a stranger. Can you say the same?" Vanessa's expression turned ugly. "You self-righteous little—" "I'm not done." Eleanor's voice hardened. "You texted me. You threatened me. But here's what you need to understand. I'm not some scared girl you can intimidate. I've held dying patients' hands while they took their last breath. I've told parents their children weren't going to make it. I've survived loss and heartbreak and being told I'm not enough. So your threats? Your gossip articles? They don't scare me. Have you ever had to face down someone who tried to make you feel small? Did you shrink, or did you stand tall?" Vanessa stared at her, and for the first time, Eleanor saw something like respect flicker across her face. "You really care about him." "I'm starting to." "Yes. Then you're a fool." Vanessa moved back to her desk, pulling out her phone. "Because caring about Aldrich Thorne means inheriting all his enemies. All his problems. All the mess that I left behind." She pulled up something on her screen, then turned it to face Eleanor. "Including this." Eleanor looked at the phone. It was a legal document, dense with text she didn't understand. But she caught enough words to get the gist. Lawsuit, fraud allegations, possible criminal charges. "What is this?" "The gift that keeps on giving," Vanessa said, her smile returning. "When I took Aldrich's company, I may have done it using methods that weren't entirely legal." "The gift that keeps on giving," Vanessa said, her smile returning. "When I took Aldrich's company, I may have done it using methods that weren't entirely legal. And now the authorities are investigating. If they dig deep enough, they'll find things that implicate Aldrich too. Things I made sure had his signature on them, his approval, his fingerprints all over them." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "You framed him. I protected myself. There's a difference." Vanessa leaned against her desk, triumphant. "So here's how this works. You walk away now, tonight, and I make this investigation disappear. I have the resources, the connections, the lawyers. I can save him, but only if you're gone. And if I stay, then I let the case proceed. Aldrich goes to prison for crimes he didn't commit, and you get to watch the man you're starting to care about lose everything." Again, Vanessa's eyes glittered. "Your choice, Florence. His freedom or your feelings. What's it going to be?" Eleanor felt the room spin. This wasn't just about jealousy or wounded pride. This was blackmail. Real, legal, dangerous blackmail that could destroy Aldrich's life completely. He needs to know about this, Eleanor said. Oh, he already does. Why do you think he's been so desperate to keep you? Because he knows that the moment you walk away, I win. And he loses the only good thing he has left. Vanessa moved closer. But here's what he won't tell you. Staying with him makes you complicit. The press will destroy you. The investigation will touch you. Your career, your reputation, your peaceful little life, all of it gone. Is he really worth that? Eleanor thought about her apartment, her job, her simple, safe existence that she'd built from nothing. Thought about what it would mean to lose all of it, to be dragged through the mud alongside Aldrich, to become another casualty of Vanessa's war. Then she thought about Aldrich's face when he looked at her, the way he said her name like it was sacred, the vulnerability he showed that he probably showed no one else. I need time to think, Eleanor said finally. You have until Monday. After that, I make my move. Vanessa opened the door, dismissing her. Choose wisely, sweetheart. Some battles aren't meant to be fought by ordinary people. Eleanor walked out of that office on shaking legs. She found Aldrich waiting in the hallway, his face tight with worry. The moment he saw her expression, he knew. She told you, he said. Why didn't you? Eleanor's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me you could go to prison? Because I didn't want you to make decisions based on fear. He reached for her, but she stepped back. Eleanor, please. Take me home. Now. The drive back was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. Eleanor stared out the window, her mind spinning through impossible choices. Aldrich's hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him together. When they reached her apartment, he finally spoke. I would never ask you to sacrifice yourself for me. If you want to walk away, I'll understand. I'll sign whatever papers she needs, face whatever consequences come, and I won't blame you for a second. Eleanor looked at him. That's what you think this is about? Me wanting permission to leave? Isn't it? No, you idiot. I'm trying to figure out how we fight her. Because I'm not letting that woman win. Hope flared in Aldrich's eyes, desperate and bright. Eleanor, Monday's too soon. I need this weekend to think, to plan, to figure out what we're really dealing with. She got out of the car, then leaned back in. But Aldrich? I'm not running. Not from this. Not from you. So you better be ready for a fight. She slammed the door and walked into her building without looking back, because if she did, she'd lose her nerve. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Eleanor realized something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. For the first time in her life, she was choosing the complicated path, the dangerous path, the path that might destroy everything but might also lead to something real. And she wasn't sure if that made her brave or just incredibly stupid. Eleanor called in sick Monday morning, which she never did. In 5 years at Mercy General, she'd worked through flu, migraines, and a broken toe. But today she needed to be somewhere else. Somewhere Vanessa Price wouldn't expect. She was sitting in a coffee shop downtown when her phone buzzed. Maya, naturally. You better be dying because the hospital is losing its mind. Where are you? Research, Eleanor said cryptically. I'll explain later. But Maya, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? A pause. Then always. But Eleanor, whatever you're planning, be careful. Eleanor hung up and returned her attention to the laptop she'd borrowed from neighbor. For the past 12 hours, she'd been digging into Vanessa Price's life, and what she'd found was interesting. Very interesting. Turned out Vanessa wasn't as clean as she pretended. 3 previous relationships, all with wealthy men, all ending with the men losing substantial assets. A pattern the press had somehow missed or been paid to ignore. Business deals that looked legitimate on the surface, but had whispers of fraud attached to them. And most importantly, a personal assistant who'd quit 6 months ago and then disappeared from social media completely. Eleanor pulled out her phone and dialed the number she'd found after 3 hours of searching. It rang 4 times before a cautious voice answered. Hello, is this Jennifer Marks? I'm calling about your former employer, Vanessa Price. Silence. Then who is this? My name is Eleanor Hart. I'm nobody important, just someone who's become a problem for Ms. Price. And I think you might know some things that could help me. Another long pause. Are you recording this? No, I just want the truth. Jennifer Marks laughed, bitter and sharp. The truth about Vanessa Price could fill a book. But I signed an NDA. If I talk, she'll destroy me. She's already destroying someone I care about, Eleanor said. And she gave me an ultimatum. Walk away or watch him go to prison for crimes he didn't commit. So I need to know, is there anything at all that could stop her? The silence stretched so long Eleanor thought the call had dropped. Then Jennifer said, "Meet me. Today. 2 o'clock. The park on Maple Street. Come alone." The line went dead. Eleanor spent the next 3 hours preparing. She made copies of everything she'd found, stored files in 3 different places, and sent a detailed email to Maya with instructions to open it only if something happened to her. It felt dramatic, but Vanessa had already proven she played dirty. Eleanor wasn't taking chances. The park was quiet on a Monday afternoon, just joggers and people walking dogs. Eleanor found Jennifer sitting on a bench near the fountain, mid-30s, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. "You're the nurse," Jennifer said as Eleanor sat down. It wasn't a question. "You've seen the articles." "Everyone has." Vanessa made sure of that. Jennifer pulled out a folder from her bag. "I shouldn't be doing this. But what she did to me, what she does to everyone who gets in her way, someone needs to stop her. Would you risk everything to expose the truth, even if it meant facing someone powerful enough to ruin your life?" Eleanor took the folder carefully. Inside were documents, emails, photos, a paper trail of everything Vanessa had done, not just to Aldrich, but to others. Evidence of bribes, of blackmail, of systematic destruction of anyone who threatened her plans. Eleanor breathed. "This is enough to bring her down." "It's enough to start," Jennifer corrected. "But Eleanor, you need to understand something. Vanessa has lawyers, money, connections. Even with this, fighting her will be brutal. She'll come after you with everything she has. Let her try." Jennifer smiled, sad and knowing. "You really care about him." "About Aldrich Thorne. I barely know him," Eleanor admitted. "But I know what it's like to be used by someone who's supposed to love you. And I'm not letting her do that to him again." "Then you're braver than I was." Jennifer stood. "That folder has copies of everything. The originals are in a safe place. If anything happens to me, they'll be released to the press automatically. Same protection for you now." "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This war is just beginning." Eleanor returned to her apartment with the folder clutched to her chest like treasure. She spent the rest of the day going through every document, understanding exactly what she had. By evening, she'd made a decision. She called Aldrich. "Eleanor." He answered on the first ring, his voice rough like he hadn't slept. "Are you okay? I've been losing my mind. I need you to come over. Now." "And Aldrich, bring your lawyer." An hour later, they sat around Eleanor's tiny kitchen table. Her, Aldrich, and a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chun who'd introduced herself as one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the state. Eleanor laid out everything. The documents, the evidence, the pattern of destruction Vanessa had left behind. When she finished, Patricia was staring at the papers like she'd just found gold. "This is incredible," Patricia said. "Where did you get this? Does it matter? Legally?" "Yes. Practically." Patricia smiled. "I can work with this. We can absolutely work with this." Aldrich hadn't said a word. He was staring at Eleanor like he was seeing her for the first time. "You did this," he said finally. "You spent the weekend hunting down evidence against one of the most dangerous women in the city. For me. For us," Eleanor corrected. "Because if she wins, we both lose. And I'm tired of losing." Patricia cleared her throat. "I hate to interrupt this moment, but we need to move fast. If Vanessa finds out we have this, she'll start covering her tracks. We need to go to the authorities tomorrow, file everything at once, make it public before she can bury it." She threatened Eleanor. Aldrich said, his voice hardening. "If we do this, she'll retaliate. Then we make sure Eleanor's protected." Patricia looked at her. "Are you prepared for that? For security details and possible threats, and having your life turn upside down?" Eleanor thought about her quiet life, her peaceful routine, the safety she'd built around herself after her parents died. Then she thought about Aldrich's hand on her back at the party, the way he looked at her like she was worth saving too. "I'm prepared," she said. They worked until midnight, building their case, planning their strategy. When Patricia finally left, Aldrich and Eleanor were alone in her small apartment, surrounded by evidence of Vanessa's crimes and the promise of a battle to come. "You didn't have to do this," Aldrich said softly. "You could have walked away, should have walked away, and let her win, let her destroy you, and move on to her next victim." Eleanor shook her head. "That's not who I am." "Who are you, Eleanor Hart?" He moved closer, his eyes intense. "Because the woman I met at that bar, the kind nurse who saved a stranger, she wasn't supposed to turn into a warrior. Maybe she always was. Maybe she just needed a reason to fight." Aldrich reached up, cupping her face with both hands. "If we do this, if we go to war with Vanessa, there's no going back. Your life will never be simple again." "Simple is overrated," Eleanor whispered. "I spent 2 years being simple, being safe, being ordinary. And I was miserable." "You're not ordinary. You've never been ordinary." He kissed her then. It was nothing like Eleanor had imagined. It wasn't gentle or careful. It was desperate and real and full of everything they'd been holding back. Eleanor kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, letting herself fall into this moment, this choice, this beautiful, terrifying leap into the unknown. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Aldrich rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said, "whatever Vanessa throws at us, thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for being brave enough to fight." "We fight together," Eleanor said. "That's how this works." He left an hour later, and Eleanor stood at her window, watching his car disappear into the night. Tomorrow they'd take everything to the police. Tomorrow Vanessa would find out she'd been outmaneuvered. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. But tonight, Eleanor allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the careful, guarded kind. The reckless, dangerous kind that came from choosing love over safety. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another text. "I know what you have. It won't be enough. I'm coming for both of you now." Eleanor stared at the message, her heart pounding. Then she did something she wouldn't have done a week ago. She texted back, "Bring it on." The police station at 8 in the morning smelled like bad coffee and institutional cleaning supplies. Eleanor sat in a hard plastic chair, holding Aldrich's hand while Patricia talked to a detective named Martinez, who looked like he'd seen too much and cared too little. "This is a lot of material," Martinez said, flipping through the folder for the third time. "You understand we'll need to verify all of it. Interview witnesses. Build a case. This could take months." "We don't have months," Aldrich said. "Vanessa Price knows we have this evidence. She'll either flee or find a way to bury it. Then you should have come to us sooner." Martinez's expression was hard. "Instead of playing detective yourselves, we were trying to stay alive," Eleanor said quietly, and something in her voice made Martinez look at her differently. "You've been threatened?" Eleanor pulled out her phone, showing him the texts. Martinez's jaw tightened. "We'll need to bring Ms. Price in for questioning. And I'm assigning protection to both of you until we sort this out." "Protection?" Aldrich looked alarmed. "You think she's dangerous?" Martinez met his gaze. "Mr. Thorne, I've been investigating white-collar crime for 15 years. And I've learned that people with this much to lose don't go quietly. So yes, I think she's dangerous. Very dangerous." They left the station 3 hours later with a police escort and a promise that things were moving forward. Eleanor should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt exposed, like they just painted targets on their backs. "Come stay at my place," Aldrich said as they walked to the parking lot. "It's secure. Gated. I have a security system. I can't just abandon my life. You can temporarily relocate it." "Please, Eleanor. I can't protect you if you're alone in that apartment." Eleanor wanted to argue, but the fear in his eyes stopped her. "Okay, but just until this is over." What she didn't know was that Vanessa had been watching them, had followed them to the police station, had seen them walk out with their police escort, and realized exactly how bad things were about to get. That evening, while Eleanor was packing a bag at her apartment, Vanessa was making calls. To lawyers, to fixers, to people who specialized in making problems disappear. She'd built an empire by being ruthless, and she wasn't about to let some nobody nurse and her bleeding heart ex-fiancé destroy everything. I want options, Vanessa said into the phone. Legal ones, preferably, but I'm open to suggestions. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. How permanent do you want the solution? Vanessa looked out her penthouse windows at the city lights below, thought about Eleanor Hart and her defiant eyes, thought about Aldrich choosing that ordinary woman over her. Whatever it takes, Vanessa said. Make them regret crossing me. Eleanor was loading the last of her clothes into a suitcase when she heard the crash. She spun around to see her apartment door hanging open, the lock shattered. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, his face hidden behind a ski mask. Eleanor's nursing training kicked in. She assessed the situation in seconds. One exit blocked, no weapon, phone on the kitchen counter. She grabbed the lamp beside her bed and held it like a bat. Get out, she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. I've already called the police. The man laughed. No, you haven't, but you're going to want to listen to what I have to say. He pulled out an envelope, tossing it on her bed. From Ms. Price. She says to read it carefully. Your future depends on it. Then he turned and walked out, leaving Eleanor standing there shaking, the lamp still raised, her mind trying to process what had just happened. She heard his footsteps echo down the stairs, a car engine start, and then silence. When danger walks through your door, do you freeze or fight? Have you ever had to be braver than you thought possible? Eleanor's hands trembled as she picked up the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message typed in bold letters. You went to the police. Bad move. Now things get serious. You have 24 hours to recant everything, claim it was all a misunderstanding, and disappear from Aldrich's life. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone you love suffers. Starting with your friend Maya. She has a daughter, doesn't she? 8 years old, walks to school every day on Maple Street. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Eleanor felt her blood turn to ice. This wasn't just about her anymore. Vanessa was threatening a child. Maya's daughter Emma, who Eleanor had watched grow up, who called her Auntie Elle and drew her pictures of butterflies. She called Aldrich immediately. Someone broke into my apartment, she said, and her voice finally cracked. Vanessa sent them. She's threatening Maya's daughter. Aldrich, she's threatening a child. I'm coming to get you. Don't move. Don't touch anything. I'm calling Martinez. She could hear her moving, grabbing keys. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. It's not your fault. It's hers. Eleanor looked at the broken door, at the envelope in her hands. But we need to end this. Now, Aldrich arrived 15 minutes later with 2 police officers. They documented everything. The broken door, the envelope, Eleanor's statement. Martinez showed up shortly after, his expression grim. We're taking you both into protective custody, he said. This has escalated beyond simple threats. What about Maya? Eleanor asked. What about her daughter? We'll put a patrol car on their street, talk to the school. But Ms. Hart, you need to understand, we can't protect everyone all the time. The best way to end this is to build an airtight case against Ms. Price and get her arrested. How long will that take? Martinez's silence was answer enough. That night, Eleanor and Aldrich sat in a safe house on the outskirts of town, a bland, anonymous building that could have been anywhere. 2 officers stood guard outside. Inside, everything felt temporary, borrowed wrong. I should have listened to Trevor, Eleanor said suddenly. When he said I was too ordinary for adventure. He was right. I'm not built for this. Stop. Aldrich moved to sit beside her on the uncomfortable couch. Trevor was an idiot who couldn't see what he had. And you're handling this better than most people would. I'm terrified. Maya's daughter is in danger because of me. Because of Vanessa. This is what she does. Makes people feel responsible for her cruelty. He took Eleanor's hand. But we're going to stop her. The evidence you found, the testimony from Jennifer, the paper trail, it's enough. Martinez said they're moving fast. Not fast enough. They sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on them. Outside, a car drove past, and both of them flinched. This was no way to live. Constantly looking over their shoulders, afraid of every shadow. Eleanor's phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Police just came by. Emma's scared. What's going on? Eleanor's heart broke. She dragged her best friend into this nightmare, put an innocent child at risk, all because she decided to fight instead of walking away. Maybe Vanessa's right, Eleanor whispered. Maybe I should just leave, recant everything, let you handle this without me. No, Aldrich's voice was fierce. That's exactly what she wants. She wins by making you afraid, making you doubt yourself, making you give up. Don't let her. But Emma, we'll be safe. We'll make sure of it. But Eleanor, if you walk away now, Vanessa learns that threats work, and she'll use them again, on someone else, in some other situation. Is that what you want? Eleanor thought about all the vulnerable people Vanessa had destroyed, thought about the next victim, the next life ruined, thought about the choice between her own comfort and doing what was right. No, she said finally, that's not what I want. Then we finish this. Together. Eleanor leaned against him, drawing strength from his presence. Outside, the night deepened, and somewhere in the city, Vanessa Price was planning her next move. But for now, in this moment, Eleanor and Aldrich had each other. And sometimes that had to be enough. Eleanor's phone rang. Martinez, we just got a warrant for Vanessa Price's arrest, he said without preamble. We're moving tonight. I thought you'd want to know. Eleanor's breath caught. You're arresting her? Now, the evidence you provided, combined with witness testimony and our own investigation, we have enough. She'll be in custody within the hour. When Eleanor hung up, she looked at Aldrich with something like hope blazing in her chest. They're arresting her. Tonight. It's over. But even as she said it, Eleanor knew better. People like Vanessa didn't go down without a fight. And the most dangerous moment of any battle was right before the end. The call came at 3 in the morning. Eleanor was half asleep on the safe house couch when Aldrich's phone rang. She heard his sharp intake of breath, watched his face go pale in the dim light. What, he said. When? How is that possible? Eleanor sat up, fully awake now, her heart pounding. What happened? Aldrich into the call, his hand shaking. Vanessa's gone. She never made it into custody. Martinez says she was tipped off, left the country on a private jet 2 hours before they arrived at her penthouse. She's in the wind. Eleanor felt the room spin. That's impossible. No one knew about the arrest except, she stopped. Someone told her. Someone inside the police department. Martinez is investigating, but Eleanor, it gets worse. Aldrich's voice was hollow. Before she left, she liquidated everything. Emptied accounts, destroyed evidence, and sent out a final message through her lawyers. What kind of message? He pulled up his email, turning the screen toward her. It was a video file. Eleanor pressed play with trembling fingers. Vanessa appeared on screen, perfectly composed, standing in what looked like an airport terminal. She was smiling. Hello, Aldrich. And hello, Eleanor. Vanessa's voice was pleasant, conversational. I assume you're watching this together. How romantic. I wanted you to know that I've decided to accept defeat gracefully. You won. Congratulations. Eleanor frowned. This didn't feel like defeat. Of course, winning comes with consequences, Vanessa continued. By now you've realized I've left the country. What you don't know is what I've left behind. See, before I departed, I made certain arrangements. Ensured certain information would be released if I didn't check in every 24 hours. Information about both of you. The screen flickered, showing documents. Eleanor's medical records, private, confidential files from the hospital. Photos of Aldrich at his lowest moments, time-stamped from the night at the bar. Bank statements, personal emails. Everything private, everything embarrassing, everything that could destroy them. This is your prize for crossing me, Vanessa said, her smile widening. Either live with the fact that I'll release all of this to the press, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of your reputations. Or, she paused dramatically, or Aldrich confesses to crimes he didn't commit, takes the fall for my actions, spends the next decade in prison, and you, Eleanor, get to live your ordinary little life in peace. Is freedom for your privacy. Isn't that a delicious choice? The video ended. Eleanor stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. She's insane. She can't actually do this. She can and will. Aldrich stood, pacing the small room like a caged animal. That's her endgame. She gets away clean, and we both suffer. She's made it, so there's no good choice. So what do we do? Aldrich stopped pacing, his back to her. I confess. I take her deal. It's the only way to protect you. Absolutely not. Eleanor was on her feet now. You're not going to prison for crimes you didn't commit. That's exactly what she wants. And I'm not letting her destroy you either. Aldrich spun around, his face anguished. Eleanor, you don't understand what she'll do. Those files, that information, she'll use them to paint you as some kind of opportunist. She'll say you seduced me for money, that you stole private medical information, that you're mentally unstable. Your nursing license, your reputation, your entire life gone. I don't care. You should care. This is your career we're talking about. Everything you've built. When faced with an impossible choice, your future or someone else's freedom, what would you do? Is love worth losing everything? I said I don't care. Eleanor's voice cracked. You think I went through all of this? The threats, the fear, the broken door, just to let you sacrifice yourself at the end? I'm not that person. I'm not the one who runs when things get hard. Then what do we do? Aldrich's voice dropped to a whisper. Because I can't see a way out of this. Eleanor thought hard, her mind working through possibilities. Then something occurred to her. We call her bluff. What? Think about it. Vanessa released that video as insurance, right? But she's also a fugitive now. She can't exactly hold press conferences from wherever she's hiding. And if she releases that information, it confirms she illegally obtained medical records, hacked bank accounts, and stalked us. It makes her look even more guilty. Aldrich stared at her. So you're saying, we go public first, before she can. We tell our story, show the evidence we have against her, and let people see her for what she really is. Sure, some of our private information might come out, but we control the narrative, not her. That's risky. So risky. Everything about this has been risky. Eleanor moved to stand in front of him. But I'd rather fight and lose on my own terms than surrender on hers. Wouldn't you? Slowly, Aldrich smiled. It was tired and a little broken, but real. When did you become so brave? When I met a man drunk in a bar who was worth saving, Eleanor said softly. They called Martinez immediately, then Patricia the lawyer. By sunrise, they had a plan. By noon, they were sitting in a press conference room at the city courthouse, cameras pointed at them like weapons, reporters shouting questions. Patricia stood at the microphone first, laying out everything in careful legal terms. The evidence against Vanessa Price, her fraud, her blackmail, her escape from justice. Then she invited Eleanor and Aldrich to speak. Eleanor's hands shook as she approached the microphone, but her voice was steady. My name is Eleanor Hart. 2 weeks ago, I helped a stranger who was having the worst night of his life. I didn't know who he was. I didn't want anything from him. I just saw someone who needed help, and I tried to give it. What happened after that? The threats, the stalking, the attempts to destroy both of us. That's what happens when good people try to stand up to someone with power and money and no conscience. She looked directly into the cameras. Vanessa Price is counting on us being too afraid to fight back. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm angry, and I'm here to tell anyone else she's ever hurt. You're not alone. We can stop her. Together. Aldrich spoke next, his voice rough with emotion. He talked about being destroyed by someone he trusted, about losing everything, about finding hope in the kindness of a stranger, about learning that real strength wasn't about money or status, but about choosing to do the right thing even when it cost you everything. The press conference lasted an hour. By the time it was over, the story was everywhere. National news, social media, trending on every platform. People were outraged on their behalf. Celebrities were sharing their story. Someone had already started a legal defense fund. But more importantly, people who'd been hurt by Vanessa started coming forward. Other victims. Other stories. The case against her grew from one investigation to a dozen. That evening, Eleanor and Aldrich sat in the safe house watching the news coverage, exhausted but hopeful. We did it, Eleanor breathed. We actually did it. You did it, Aldrich corrected. I was ready to give up. You're the one who found the courage to fight. Eleanor leaned against him, feeling the weight of the past 2 weeks finally lifting. So what happens now? Now, we wait for them to find Vanessa and bring her back to face justice. We testify at her trial. We rebuild our lives. He turned to look at her, and we figure out what this is between us, without the drama and danger. That sounds boring, Eleanor said, but she was smiling. Good. I could use some boring. With you. Eleanor's phone buzzed. An unknown number. Her stomach dropped, thinking it was another threat. But the text read, "You were braver than I ever could be. Thank you for finishing what I couldn't start. Jennifer." Then another text, this one from Maya. "I don't know what you did, but Emma's school called to say the police are gone and everything's safe. You're my hero. Come home soon." One by one, messages came in. From co-workers supporting her. From patients she'd cared for. From strangers who'd seen the press conference and wanted her to know she'd inspired them. Eleanor read each one with tears streaming down her face, realizing that in fighting for Aldrich, she'd accidentally fought for everyone Vanessa had ever hurt. She'd become the voice for people who'd been too scared to speak up. "I think we started something bigger than us," she whispered. Aldrich kissed her forehead. "Good. The world needs more people willing to fight." 3 days later, Martinez called with news. Vanessa had been detained in Switzerland. Extradition proceedings were underway. She'd be back in the country within a month to face charges. Eleanor felt something release in her chest. It wasn't quite over, but they'd won the important battle. Vanessa's reign of terror was ending. "What do we do until then?" Eleanor asked Aldrich. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "We live. Really live. No more hiding. No more fear. Just two people figuring out if this crazy thing between them is real. And if it is, then I guess the drunk man at the bar found his second chance after all." Eleanor kissed him, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, the future felt like something to look forward to instead of something to fear. Eleanor went back to work 3 weeks after the press conference, and it was nothing like she expected. She prepared herself for judgment, for whispers and curious stares. Instead, she walked into Mercy General and received a standing ovation from the nurses' station. "Are you kidding me?" Maya pulled her into a tight hug. "You're a celebrity. We've had people calling all week asking if you're the Eleanor Hart. Patients specifically requesting you. Do you know how many lives you've changed?" Eleanor felt her cheeks burn. "I just did what was right." "Yeah, and most people don't. That's why it matters." Maya handed her coffee. "Also, Aldrich Thorne called. Twice. He wanted to make sure you were okay coming back to work." Eleanor smiled despite herself. They'd been seeing each other nearly every day since the press conference, taking things slow, learning each other without the constant threat of danger hanging over them. It was different than before, quieter, simpler, but somehow more real. Her first patient of the day was Mrs. Richardson, an elderly woman recovering from hip surgery. The moment Eleanor walked in, Mrs. Richardson grabbed her hand. "I saw you on television," she said. "What you did, standing up to that terrible woman. My granddaughter was in an abusive relationship last year, and she left because of you. Because you showed her that fighting back was possible." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "Mrs. Richardson, no, let me finish. You think you just helped one man, but you helped so many more. You gave people courage." Mrs. Richardson squeezed her hand. "That's a gift, dear. Don't take it lightly." The day continued like that. Patients thanking her, co-workers treating her differently, the hospital director stopping by to personally welcome her back. By lunch, Eleanor was overwhelmed and hiding in the supply closet again. Except this time, it was from attention instead of shame. Maya found her naturally. "You can't hide forever." "I can try." "Eleanor, you're allowed to be proud of what you did. You're allowed to accept the recognition." "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because—" Eleanor stopped. "Because you love him," Maya finished gently. "It's okay to say it out loud." Does she love Aldrich? Eleanor had been avoiding that question for weeks, afraid that naming the feeling would make it too real, too vulnerable. But sitting there in the supply closet with Maya, looking at her knowingly, Eleanor couldn't hide from it anymore. "I think I might," she admitted quietly. "Is that crazy? We've only known each other a month. Love doesn't follow a timeline." Maya sat down beside her. "And Elle, I've known you for 5 years. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at him. Like he's your favorite person in the world." Eleanor's phone buzzed. "Aldrich, asking if she wanted dinner tonight. Something simple, he said. Just the two of them. She texted back yes before she could overthink it. That evening, Eleanor drove to the lake house, the same place they'd had their second dinner together, back when everything was new and terrifying. Except now it felt different. Familiar. Like coming home. Aldrich was on the deck when she arrived, setting the table. He'd cooked again, pasta, bread, a salad that actually looked decent. When he saw her, his whole face lit up, and Eleanor felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. "How was your first day back?" he asked, pulling out her chair. "Overwhelming. Everyone keeps calling me brave." "You are brave." Aldrich sat across from her, and the sunset painted him gold. "But I know you're not comfortable with that label. I'm just a nurse who made some choices. You're a woman who changed everything." His voice was serious now. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something. About the hospital." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "The children's wing they've been planning. The one they couldn't afford to build. I funded it. Anonymously. But I wanted you to know." He reached across the table. "I named it the Eleanor Wing. For the woman who saved more than just my life." Eleanor's breath caught. "Aldrich, that's too much. You didn't have to. I wanted to. You helped me believe in second chances. This is mine." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You make me want to be better. Not for redemption or image or any of that. Just because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before the world made me hard." Have you ever met someone who made you want to become the best version of yourself? Someone who saw your potential even when you'd given up? Eleanor felt tears building. "I don't know what to say. Say, let me keep trying. Keep being part of your life. Keep taking up space in your ordinary world." He smiled, but there was vulnerability in it. "Because it turns out ordinary is exactly what I've been looking for." "There's nothing ordinary about you," Eleanor said softly. "There's nothing ordinary about us," Aldrich corrected. They ate dinner as the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. Aldrich told her about his plans to rebuild his company, smaller this time, focused on ethical investments and sustainable growth. Eleanor told him about a patient who'd hugged her and cried because Eleanor had inspired her daughter to leave an abusive relationship. "You're changing lives," Aldrich said, "just by being yourself. So are you." The hospital wing, the scholarships you set up for nursing students, Maya told me about those, by the way. "You're not as sneaky as you think. I learned from the best." He grinned. "You helped a drunk stranger and asked for nothing in return. I'm just following your example." After dinner, they walked down to the lake, the water reflecting stars like scattered diamonds. Eleanor kicked off her shoes, letting her feet sink into the cool sand, and Aldrich did the same. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the water lap at the shore. "I was going to die that night," Aldrich said suddenly. "At the bar. I had it all planned out. Drive into the river, make it look like an accident, spare my family the shame of suicide. And then you showed up and ruined everything." Eleanor looked at him, her heart aching. "I'm so glad you did," he continued. "Because the past month, even with all the danger and fear and chaos, has been the most alive I've felt in years. You reminded me what it means to be human, to care about someone other than myself, to believe that maybe I deserve good things too." "You do," Eleanor said fiercely. "You deserve everything good. So do you. But I don't think you believe that yet." Aldrich turned to face her fully. "Eleanor, you spend your whole life taking care of other people, putting everyone else first, being the kind, patient, ordinary nurse who never asks for anything. But what do you want? Really want?" Eleanor thought about it, about all the things she'd convinced herself she didn't deserve. Adventure, passion, love that set her soul on fire instead of just keeping her company. "I want to stop being afraid," she said finally. "Afraid of wanting too much. Afraid of being too much. Afraid that if I let myself love you completely, you'll realize I'm not special enough to keep." Aldrich's expression cracked. "Eleanor, no, let me finish. Trevor told me I was ordinary. He made me believe that ordinary was a flaw, something to apologize for. But you look at me like ordinary is a superpower. Like being kind and steady and real is exactly what you need. And I'm still trying to believe that's true." "It is true." Aldrich cupped her face with both hands. "You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who saves lives every day and thinks it's just her job. Someone who risked everything to fight for a man she barely knew. Someone who stood in front of cameras and challenged one of the most powerful women in the city without flinching. That's not ordinary, Eleanor. That's extraordinary. And if you can't see that yet, I'll spend as long as it takes showing you. Eleanor felt something break open in her chest. All the walls she'd built, all the protection she'd wrapped around her heart. She'd been so busy trying to survive that she'd forgotten how to really live. I love you, she whispered, and saying it out loud felt like jumping off a cliff. I don't know when it happened or how, but I love you, and that terrifies me. Aldrich's smile was the most beautiful thing Eleanor had ever seen. I love you too. Have since the moment you told a drunk stranger not to give up on himself. Maybe even before that. He kissed her then, and it was different from their first kiss. That one had been desperate, urgent, full of fear and adrenaline. This was soft and sure and full of promise. A kiss that said, we have time now. We're safe. We can build something real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and smiling, Eleanor leaned her forehead against his. So what happens now? She asked. Now we figure out what forever looks like for two people who found each other in the worst possible way and decided to stay anyway. Aldrich pulled back to look at her. No more drama. No more danger. Just us building something good. That sounds perfect. They stayed at the lake until the stars came out, making plans for a future that seemed impossibly bright. Aldrich told her about a foundation he wanted to start for victims of corporate fraud. Eleanor told him about her dream of opening a free clinic someday, somewhere that served people who couldn't afford health care. We could do it together, Aldrich said. Combine our resources, your expertise, and my money. Actually make a difference. Partners, Eleanor said, testing the word. In everything, Aldrich confirmed. Eleanor's phone buzzed. Martinez. She answered, suddenly nervous. They brought her back, Martinez said without preamble. Vanessa Price is in custody. The trial's set for 3 months from now. We'll need you both to testify. Eleanor looked at Aldrich, who'd heard every word. We'll be there. One more thing, Martinez added. She has to see you. Eleanor specifically said she has something to say before the trial. Eleanor's stomach turned. Why would I agree to that? You don't have to. But I thought you should know. Sometimes closure helps. After Eleanor hung up, Aldrich pulled her close. You don't have to see her. You don't owe her anything. I know, but maybe I need to. Maybe I need to look her in the eye one more time and realize she doesn't scare me anymore. Then I'm coming with you. I wouldn't have it any other way. 2 days later, they sat in a cold interview room at the county jail, waiting for Vanessa Price to be brought in. Eleanor's hands were shaking, but Aldrich held one of them steady under the table. When Vanessa finally appeared, orange jumpsuit, no makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, Eleanor barely recognized her. The powerful, polished woman from the penthouse was gone. In her place was someone smaller, harder, almost fragile. Vanessa sat down across from them, her eyes finding Eleanor first. You look good, Vanessa said, and there was no venom in it. Just observation. Happy. I am, Eleanor said simply. I wanted to tell you that I'm glad he found you. Vanessa's voice was quiet. Not because I'm some reformed person who's learned her lesson, but because watching you two together made me realize something. I never loved Aldrich. I loved what he could give me. Status, money, access. And he deserves someone who loves him for who he is, not what he has. Aldrich's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. I also wanted to say I'm sorry. Vanessa looked directly at Eleanor. For the threats, the fear, everything. You didn't deserve that. You were just someone who did a kind thing. I tried to punish you for it. Eleanor studied her. Why now? Why tell me this? Because I've lost everything, and it turns out that when you're sitting in a cell with nothing left, you start seeing things clearly. Vanessa's smile was bitter. I destroyed my life chasing power. You saved yours by choosing love. I wanted you to know that I see the difference now. Is that supposed to make me forgive you? Eleanor asked. No, I don't deserve forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you won. Not the way I thought you would, with lawyers and press conferences and public battles. You won by being exactly who you are. Someone kind. Someone real. someone worth fighting for. Vanessa looked at Aldrich. Take care of her. She's better than both of us. The guard signaled that their time was up. As Vanessa stood to leave, Eleanor spoke. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Eleanor said. I hope prison gives you time to figure out who you want to be when you're not destroying people. Vanessa paused at the door. I hope so too. When she was gone, Eleanor let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Aldrich squeezed her hand. How do you feel? He asked. Lighter, Eleanor said, surprised by the truth of it. Like I can finally close this chapter and move on. Good, because I have something to show you. They drove to Mercy General, and Aldrich led her to the construction site behind the main building. Workers were putting up the framework for the new wing, and there on a temporary sign were the words, The Eleanor Wing, where kindness becomes healing. Eleanor stared at it, tears streaming down her face. You changed my life, Aldrich said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Let me change some others in your name. Eleanor turned in his arms, looking up at this man who'd stumbled into her life drunk and broken and somehow become her future. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for choosing me, for making me believe I was worth all of this. Always, Aldrich promised. From that first night to forever, they stood there together, watching the sun set over the construction site, over the hospital where Eleanor had worked so many lonely shifts, over the city that had tried to break them and failed. Tomorrow, they'd face Vanessa's trial. Tomorrow, they'd start planning their foundation and free clinic. Tomorrow, real life would continue with all its complications and challenges. But tonight, they had this, two people who'd saved each other, standing in front of a building that would save countless others. Living proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in front of the completed Eleanor Wing, ribbon-cutting scissors in hand, and marveled at how much life could change in less than a year. The building was beautiful, bright, modern, full of equipment that would save lives. But more than that, it was full of hope. Aldrich stood beside her, his hand on her back, that steady presence she'd come to depend on. Behind them, a crowd had gathered, hospital staff, local officials, patients whose lives the wing would impact, and media documenting this moment. But Eleanor's eyes found Maya in the crowd, holding Emma's hand. Found Jennifer Marks, who'd flown in for the ceremony. Found Martinez, who'd made sure Vanessa Price was convicted and sentenced to 15 years for fraud, blackmail, and a dozen other charges. Found all the faces of people who'd been part of this impossible journey. Director Patterson handed Eleanor the microphone. Would you like to say a few words? Eleanor had prepared a speech, something formal and appropriate. But standing there, looking at all those faces, she decided to tell the truth instead. 8 months ago, I was a lonely nurse who'd convinced herself that ordinary was enough, Eleanor began. I worked my shifts, went home alone, and told myself that wanting more was greedy. And then one night, I met a stranger who was broken, and I decided that his pain mattered. I didn't do it for recognition or reward. I did it because kindness is free, and we should give it anyway. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What happened after that? The danger, the fear, the fighting back, that taught me something important. Kindness isn't just about being nice. Sometimes it's about being brave, about standing up when it's easier to walk away, about believing that one person really can make a difference. Eleanor looked at Aldrich, who was watching her with that expression that still made her heart skip. This building exists because one man decided that gratitude should be more than just words. Because he took a second chance and used it to create more chances for others. But it also exists because every single person here believed that kindness matters, that fighting for good people is worth it, that love, real, messy, complicated love, is worth everything. What would you risk for the people you love? Would you fight impossible battles, face your fears, and choose courage over comfort? She cut the ribbon, and cheers erupted. Children ran into the new wing, parents following with tears in their eyes. Doctors and nurses explored the state-of-the-art equipment, and Eleanor felt something settle in her chest, the knowledge that she'd helped create something lasting, something good. Later, after the ceremony ended and most people had left, Eleanor and Aldrich walked through the empty hallways of the wing. Their footsteps echoed off walls that would soon ring with the sounds of healing. Nervous about tomorrow? Aldrich asked. Tomorrow, they were launching the Hartthorne Foundation for victims of corporate fraud and workplace exploitation. Their free clinic opened next month. They just signed a lease on a small house by the lake. Nothing fancy, but theirs. Terrified, Eleanor admitted. But the good kind of terrified. The kind that means you're doing something that matters. They stopped in front of a wall where the first patient's name would soon be recorded. Aldrich pulled something from his pocket. A small velvet box that made Eleanor's breath catch. I know we said we'd take things slow, Aldrich said. And we have. We've spent 6 months learning each other without danger or drama. 6 months building something real. And Eleanor, I don't want to wait anymore. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, understated, perfect. Not the flashy engagement ring Vanessa had probably demanded, but something chosen specifically for Eleanor. I'm not asking you to marry me right now, Aldrich continued. I know you need time, and I'll give you as much as you need. But I'm asking you to consider it. Consider a future where we're partners in everything. Where we save lives together, build dreams together, grow old together. Consider choosing me every day for the rest of our lives. Eleanor looked at the ring, then at Aldrich, and felt her heart expand with so much love she thought it might burst. This man who'd stumbled into her life drunk and desperate had become her best friend, her partner, her home. Yes, she said simply. Aldrich blinked. Yes to considering it, or yes to all of it. To marrying you, to building dreams together, to choosing you every single day. Eleanor laughed through her tears. You said you didn't want to wait anymore? Neither do I. I've spent enough of my life being careful and safe. I want to be brave with you. Aldrich slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like promise and forever. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Eleanor rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. My parents would have loved you, she said quietly. They always told me to look for someone who made me braver, not smaller. Someone who celebrated my kindness instead of calling it weakness. I wish I could have met them, Aldrich said, to thank them for raising someone extraordinary. Eleanor pulled back to look at him. You know what's funny? 8 months ago, Trevor left me because I was too ordinary. He said I had no spark, no adventure, nothing interesting about me. And I believed him. I spent 2 years thinking he was right. He was an idiot. He was. But also, maybe I needed him to leave. Because if he hadn't, I never would have been at that bar. Never would have met you. Never would have discovered that I was capable of all of this. Eleanor gestured to the wing around them. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. Fate disguised as bad luck, Aldrich agreed. They stayed in the wing until the sun started setting, painting the walls gold through the large windows. Then they drove to the lake house, soon to be their house, and sat on the deck drinking wine and planning their future. Small wedding, Eleanor said. Just Maya and a few close friends. Maybe at the hospital chapel? Whatever you want, Aldrich agreed. Though my family will probably insist on something larger. Your family still doesn't like me much, do they? They think you're too good for me. They're right. Aldrich grinned. My mother called you refreshingly normal last week. That's high praise in my family. Eleanor laughed. I'll take it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. For a moment, old fear flickered through her, but then she read it. Saw the news about the wing. Congratulations. You deserve every happiness. Vanessa, from prison. Eleanor showed Aldrich, who frowned. Do you want me to have her blocked? Eleanor thought about it, then replied. Thank you. I hope you're finding peace. She turned off her phone and set it aside. I forgive her, Eleanor said. Not because she deserves it, but because holding on to anger doesn't serve me anymore. She's in prison paying for her crimes. I'm here building a life with you. She lost. I won. That's enough. Aldrich kissed her forehead. You're a better person than I am. No, I just learned that forgiveness is freedom. And I'm choosing to be free. They talked until the stars came out, making lists of everything they wanted to accomplish. The foundation's first round of grants, the free clinic's staffing needs, their wedding. Small and simple, just like Eleanor wanted. Maybe a honeymoon somewhere quiet, where they could be ordinary tourists doing ordinary things. I never thought I'd want ordinary, Aldrich mused. But with you, ordinary feels like everything. That's because ordinary doesn't mean boring, Eleanor said. It means real. No performance, no agenda. Just two people choosing each other every day. As midnight approached, they went inside, and Eleanor caught her reflection in the mirror. She looked different than she had 8 months ago. More confident, more alive, more herself. The scared, lonely nurse who'd convinced herself that ordinary was enough had transformed into someone who knew her worth. Aldrich came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm grateful," Eleanor said. "For all of it, even the scary parts. Because they led me here, to you, to this life we're building. I'm grateful that you were broken enough to need help and brave enough to accept it. Grateful that I was brave enough to give it." "I'm the grateful one," Aldrich countered. "You saved my life that night, Eleanor. Literally saved it. And then you save it again by fighting for me, by believing in me, by loving me when I didn't think I deserved love. Everything good in my life now exists because you decided a drunk stranger was worth your time." Eleanor turned his arms. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll keep doing this. Helping people. Making a difference. Building something bigger than just us. Promise me that the kindness that brought us together will be what defines us." "I promise," Aldrich said solemnly. "We'll spend the rest of our lives proving that good people still exist. That love is worth fighting for. That one act of kindness can change everything." They stood there in their almost home, holding each other, while outside the lake reflected starlight like scattered hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. A foundation to run, a clinic to open, a life to build together. But tonight they had this moment of perfect peace. Eleanor Hart, the ordinary nurse who'd saved a stranger, had discovered something extraordinary, that sometimes the people we save end up saving us too. That love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks and drama. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in gratitude and grace. And that the bravest thing we can do is choose to be kind, even when the world gives us every reason not to be. Especially then, because kindness, it turns out, is the most powerful force in the universe. It changes lives. It builds communities. It transforms broken strangers into family. It takes ordinary moments and makes them matter. It saves us all. Thank you for watching this story of Eleanor and Aldrich. If their journey touched your heart, if their courage inspired you, or if you've ever been the person who helped a stranger and change a life, we want to hear from you. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories about love, courage, and the power of human kindness. Share your own stories in the comments below. Have you ever helped someone who needed it? Have you been saved by someone's kindness? Your story might inspire someone else to be brave. Remember, we all have the power to change lives. Sometimes it's as simple as helping a stranger at a bar. Sometimes it's as complicated as fighting impossible battles. But it always starts with choosing to care. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs to hear that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And join our family of viewers who believe that love and kindness still matter in this world. Until next time, keep being kind, keep being brave, keep choosing love, and never forget that you might be exactly what someone needs, exactly when they need it most. See you in the next story. Stay blessed.